Welcome everyone to Open Office Hours. This is a time every month where we break down different startup concepts to help you gain traction in the most important parts of your business. And today we're going to talk about how your product teams can merge continuous discovery habits and continuous delivery methods by aligning them around a specific product or business metric. And we're going to talk about this a new loop that we've created, a new model. And that way you're focused on making an impact on the business and not just like shipping new features that aren't really making an impact and helping you grow. If this is your first time joining us, be sure to subscribe. And as a reminder, this model that we're going to share today is from our free, it's called Ready to Scale video series. So if you're interested in learning more, I'll drop a link in the chat to that, as well as in the recording, the description of the recording that we'll upload later next week. So my name is Jacob Miller. I'm the marketing and brand manager here at Headway. I help host events and live streams like this. It's a lot of fun. So I'll be, replying to you in the comments and stuff and engaging with you there. But I'm going to hand it over to Andrew and the rest of the team here, and they'll talk about what we'll be going through today.
Thanks, Jacob. So I'm Andrew, the partner and CEO here at Headway, and excited to really dig into this topic. I mean, this is the bread and butter of any product company, and excited to chat about just how we align our teams around making a bigger impact for our product, making our money go further, especially today as we think about, potential recession coming on, profitability. We think about all these things like how do we get more out of what we have, and I'm really excited to talk through this model. So before we dive in, though, I wanted to just kind of root everybody in the context of kind of where we've been with the Ready to Scale series. And so we started with go-to-market. We started with customer segmentation, really tried to understand, like, if you're trying to grow through expanding your market, there are different, they're not necessarily striations in your market, but really specific opportunities that are essentially market segments that ultimately, as you're serving different people and as your startup grows, they're going to ask and want different things from you. They're going to be pulling your product in different ways. And so our video series goes really deep into how you can start to unpack and understand this process. How do you start prioritizing different segments? How do you just look at them from different angles to really make sure that you're going down the right path? And kind of as we go to that, we come to the next step, which is like, what are the right metrics we should focus on? And what are some of these things across the journey? And I'm sure you've seen this, pirate model before, if you've been in SaaS for any period of time. But how do we think about the customer's journey and how we pull them through the product? What are the most important pieces? And then this realization that we ultimately, even if we're serving one customer and we're not a marketplace, this realization that, like, we actually have different customers. We have people hiring our product to do different things or to make different progress for them. We have to understand, like, how do we improve that experience across the journey? How do we make it better? And what customers are we just not going to serve really well? And how do we align our teams around who those right fit customers are? We talked a lot about departments, aligning those in product teams, and ultimately aligning your teams around customers, understanding the jobs and features and platforms, and how could you start orchestrating your team in a way that would help you make more progress and ultimately move the needle. And that kind of gets to our discussion today of, hey, once teams are aligned, how do we make sure that they're making the biggest impact they can? And oftentimes what happens is features come down from the top or ideas come out, and we're going to talk about how do we calm some of those anxieties or some of those desires to just throw ideas out. And it can be really a really good method for generating lots of ideas really quickly. But how do we go to the source of truth for our business? And that's customer behavior. So we're going to talk about that here in a minute. But most teams go through discovery once, right? So if you think about the early stages of your startup, you discovered the problem, you defined it, you defined an ultimate solution, and then you started delivering it. And we get in this loop where people have access to customers in the company, and those are separated from other folks. And so we get into this continuous delivery. We get into Scrum, Agile, Kanban, and that can be very limiting for your company, right? We're sheltering off this entire left side, which is really customers. And so as we think about the continuous impact loop, a lot of this is about putting a metric and a customer, at the center of this team. And really what, you can categorize it as like dual track Agile, essentially, where, you're doing discovery and delivery continuously. We have these 4 different loops that we'll go through here coming up. And so what do we know to be true? We know that building a successful business is all about behavior change. So we're trying to answer the question of what causes people to act again and again and again and reuse our product and retain. And to understand that, we really have to understand who we're serving and have a system in place to run experiments with them, both simulated, we'll talk about prototyping, and also in limited releases and in reality, to make sure that we're actually having the right impact. So the goal of continuous impact teams, and Marty Kagan has a book on this called Empowered Teams, and this kind of builds upon some of these foundational elements that really empower people to go work with your customers to co-create, to solve problems moving forward. And we really need to align on business and customer value, right? Because we know the startups who provide the most value today and tomorrow and over time ultimately win. So the question is, how can we provide more value for the business and for our customers? And to do that, really have to understand what moves the needle for the business. Like what are the key metrics, as we talked about before, retention, acquisition in those models that move the needle, and then what do our customers value, why they value it, what are the nuances inside of that? So, one of the questions that we get to is like, okay, with knowing that we need to know what moves the needle for the business and customers, how do we deliver on that better than anyone else and continue raising the bar? And Bill Gurley has this quote that I'm sure you've heard: more startups die of indigestion than starvation. Focus wins. Doing too many things fails. And I think a lot of this can be tracked back to teams, back to workshops, back to things that aren't rooted in customer insights, but are really these, if you think about product, there's kind of two areas. There's one that's like incrementation, which is kind of what we're talking about. And then there's like innovation, these big leaps of faith. And I think oftentimes a lot of product teams confuse the two and when the right time is for it, right? So that's why we talk about how do we get signal from people? How do we understand really the psychology of customer behavior? What are they doing on our platform? What are they thinking and feeling? How are their expectations changing over time? What are their motivations to change and to solve? How do they avoid pain? And these are all moving flags, because every day people experience different things. So how do we root the customer to give us those signals? And then how do we avoid noise? Just doing what other competitors are doing. How do we avoid these big bet feature ideas? Looking at press releases, latest trends, like feels like we're missing out, but really the answers are from our customers. And so today I'm going to pass it over to Ryan, and we'll talk about how can we put the customer and a metric at the center of what we're doing to really help our teams make more impact.
Thanks, Andrew. Ryan here, head of product here at Headway. We're excited to introduce the continuous impact loop for you today. And we're going to start by talking about, I want you to think about the product you have and get back to basics. Like the fundamentals really do matter. Think about who's the actual buyer and who's the actual user. Andrew talked about potentially multiple customers in a B2B, or marketplace. There's lots of different roles, but think about who's the main person we need to deliver value for, and what are we promising them? Where are they now on the left here? What's kind of like their life like now? What kind of pains are they going through? What are we promising them, and what's this outcome we're trying to help them achieve? When we think about products, we think a lot of times about metrics and data, and we're just tweaking this and that, but we often lose sight of the fact that actually there's this human component of products, and that is it's all about the customer. And the customer has to actually change their behavior in order for all of this to work, right? For us to be successful, there's a lot of things that are actually outside our control. It's how do we serve the customer in a way that's easy enough for them to go from left to right. And doing that isn't a one-step process. It isn't just an easy button for your product to work. It's often a lot of different steps, a lot of different behavior changes along the way to allow the customer to go from what we've promised them to actually achieving the value. When we think about that, there's some of these major components here. Let's say in the left, let's say it's onboarding and activation, right? There's some core value stuff, some behavioral loops in here, retention loops in here, habits. And there's also customer support or things we need to do along the way to ensure they're successful. When we think about these steps, you probably already have your analytics set up. You probably kind of already are getting signals that, people are getting past these first few steps and they're probably dropping off somewhere, right? And the key is to figure out, hey, where's the bottleneck in my current flow, right? Where's the bottleneck in our system? If you think of the business as a system, there's always one constraint. Where is that? All these different behaviors. Now, the example I'm kind of going to walk through is like a data visualization product. Let's say you have a product where they have to, first thing they're going to do is probably create their account. Maybe they need to actually like hook up these integrations, upload some data, Excel sheets, I don't know what, let's just say that to get this data visualization product to work, we have to like hook up and do a couple things in the beginning to achieve the value. And we can see right here that there's a white dot here. It's bigger than the rest, and that's because that's a magic moment. So not all moments in your product are the same, right? What's that moment early on in the journey where the customer lights up and they're like, wow, this is really why I bought this product, right? I see the value now. I get it. Like, I'm going to use this. I'm going to continue using this. If they don't get to a magic moment early enough in the game, then it can often stall you out and people can drop off. And you don't know why they're dropping off. We're going to talk about that. But the first thing to identify is that where's the magic moment in your product? And are enough people getting there? In this instance, we're going to say that, hey, we're going to zoom into this magic moment, because if they don't get here, they can't experience this other core value. The stuff downstream from here doesn't really matter if we're having a problem right here at this magic moment. So what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in to this behavior right here, and we're going to actually center the next quarter with this team around making impact on just this one moment, because we know if we improve the experience here, it's going to do a lot of stuff for us awesome downstream. So let's say this magic moment is when the customer views their data for the first time, when they visualize that in the first time in the product, and they see like what's possible with this, their eyes light up, right? But the problem is right now we're only getting 20% of people to actually get to that part of the journey, and our goal is to get it from 20% to 80%. So the first part of the continuous impact loop is identifying which metric you should be focusing on, what needle you guys need to move as a product team. Now the next step is to think about, is to enter the discovery loop, thinking about what opportunities exist. Okay, we have the metric now. I know where people are stuck, but I don't know why. The data is going to tell us all these different things, indicators, but the problem with data is it only tells you what is happening. It can't really tell you why. And you probably have some ideas of what these opportunities might be, but you need to go validate that. You need to go to see, is that really what's happening? Before we invest the next 6 months in actually building something, we're going to actually identify what are the actual biggest opportunities to find out, how do we move this needle? How do we get more people to this magic moment? So then what we're going to do is we're going to begin our discovery loop. The discovery loop is all about exploration. It's about learning and really fast validation before we go in product. So the first thing to do is to look at all those data and analytics. You probably also have your sales team telling you one thing. You have your customer success or support team telling you other things. There's competing information, competing priorities, and your job in the discovery loop is to actually prioritize and figure out what opportunities are really going to actually move the needle and help people get to that magic moment. Next thing to do is actually jump into customer interviews. That means actually having conversations with your customers. We suggest actually like automated recruitment, in-product automated recruitment. So you can interact with customers every single week. That is super valuable. The questions you're going to be thinking about here is, what separates? I mean, some people are getting, really far in your product and doing super well. Some people are getting caught up early and dropping off. And your job is to figure out, hey, what's the difference between the customers that stay, the customers that succeed, and the customers that drop off and fail, right? What's different? Is it a knowledge thing? Is it a context thing? Is it a motivational thing? Is it a customer segmentation problem, right? You don't know these things until you get in customer interviews. That's where so many big insights are going to come from. And we strongly suggest getting close to your customers to actually figure out what are those opportunities. Then synthesizing those together, putting those in and starting to form a tree, starting to synthesize patterns, right? Oh, the real reason that people are getting caught up and dropping off early is because maybe we set an expectation poorly poorly in our onboarding. Maybe your product-led growth and some of that early onboarding stuff just it didn't communicate something, or maybe the friction's too high, right? Whatever those opportunities and patterns you're seeing, you're going to pull that back in and go back to the center here, and you're going to start building an opportunity tree. And you can credit Teresa Torres for kind of codifying that. But if you're doing continuous impact, this is how you think about it. You have a metric, and then you go from metric to what levers can I pull to actually move the needle? And so you're going to have a list of opportunities. And so let's say that some of the one of the ones you thought was the problem before actually isn't the problem. You cross that one out. There's another one here in yellow, like, yeah, we could there's something there, but it's small. Maybe there's 2 green ones that you want to chase, but you realize that, hey, one of these opportunities is a lot bigger than the other. Like, this seems to be the biggest pattern and the biggest reason why people aren't getting to further along in the journey that we need. So right now I'm going to pass it off to Billy, who's going to continue the discovery loop and talk about going from opportunities into solution and prototyping.
Thank you, Ryan. Billy Sweetman here, head of design here at Headway, and I'm excited to kind of talk about how we go about creating our solution and prototyping some initial concepts here. So like Ryan said before, we have our opportunities here, and we defined this one here, and now we need to start to move into the solution design. We can really start to unpack it. We know it's not the actual software, and maybe it's really our customers who might be need to adjusting their behavior a little bit. Maybe they're scared to share some of their initial information. Maybe it's a data mismatch. We're going to take all that information that we gathered during that exploration and start to apply that and start looking at that when we go through our solution design process here. We're going to come back out, and now we're going to really be on the prototype loop of discovery. First thing we're going to do is really working with a small strike team of stakeholders to work through this solution. This might be a team of designers, some product folks, maybe developer on this team. And we're going to be doing as many solution ideations as we possibly can that we feel will fit in this opportunity. We might be running some design sprints during this phase, doing some activities like Crazy Eights, really just trying to get as many ideas as we can, really taking those crude wireframes and crude ideas, and we might, based on our insights and our intuition, knock a few out of the way there that we feel don't work, but just generate as many ideas as possible. We're going to be asking ourselves questions like, how does it fold into the current experience? And then, is there any sort of information architecture that's going to adjust based on some of these new solutions? These might be some of the questions that we come out of this. Once we're done and we've got a couple of good ideas that we want to run with, we're going to move on into our prototyping phase here. Here we're taking those lo-fi, crude concepts and really starting to build high fidelity versions of these. We're going to be building prototypes, interactive experiences that our customers can take a look at. We want to be leveraging our design system at this point. We don't want to be building a whole bunch of brand new stuff, or if we do need some new stuff that needs to be added to our design system, we want to consult with our development team at this point, really have those conversations about what level of effort that's going to be to get added. Once we're feeling comfortable with those prototypes and those experiences, they feel real good, we want to start moving that into our testing phase. During testing, we're going to be recruiting users. Like Ryan said before, we might already have some automated recruiting set up. We might go recruit a bunch of users that we've already talked with, some customers we might have interviewed early on in that exploration phase, or we might be recruiting some new yet to be customers, and we might be using some platforms like usertesting.com or something like UserBrain. What we really want to do is sit down and do observations with all of our customers here. We'll be interviewing them. We're going to be listening for moments of joy or friction. We're really focused on their behaviors. What are they doing? What are they not doing? We're also going to set some micro metrics along in these user tests. Things like maybe time to task. Do we have a certain completion rate that we're looking for as they're going through these different usability tests? And we also might be A/B testing our existing product with our new solutions at the same time. So just some things to consider as we're going through that test. After we get all the data and observations, we're going to compile this all into a nice report so we can actually go ahead and start thinking about how we go bring these solutions forward into our next phase. So once we've gone through and we've actually tested all the solutions, like we said before, we had 4 potential solutions we could run through. We might have sub-solutions within here, but we've realized that only one of them is really tracking the way we think it's going to go. We really want to kill as many bad ideas as we can during this phase. So it's really about idea generation and concept generation during this phase and testing those things out to see what works and what isn't working. Now that we've got sort of a leading indicator on what the right solution is, now we want to go test on the real product. So we're going to be moving into delivery next, which still early on is going to be about learning. We're going to kick it over to John here as we start to talk about in-product experimentation.
Yeah, thanks, Billy. So John Kinney here, partner and CTO, and I'm excited today to talk to you about delivery. So to dig into this first loop on the right and talk about what it looks like when world-class product teams do delivery well. You may think that delivery is just shipping a feature out to end users, but really it's a lot more about learning and behavior change. We need to measure if the feature is having a positive impact on our end users, and to do that, we need to design a pilot program. At a high level, a pilot program is just this limited release to a certain number of customers. But who and how do we segment those folks up? It's really up to you. You know, a couple examples, you could have personas, perhaps like teams with more than 50 users, or maybe it's early adopters, folks that have opted in and sort of been following along with your product for a long time and want to help you test out new features, or could be internal people who use your product in their day-to-day work. So one fun example of this, a product we use at Headway every day is called GitHub, and the employees of GitHub use GitHub to build GitHub, and so they get access to early features for that code repository hosting platform that allow them to interact with each other, perhaps on a pull request or something like that, more effectively. So they test out those features earlier than other folks. But a pilot program shouldn't just be about early access to features. For a pilot to function well, we really need it to have three things: a well-defined experiment, that limited release that we talked about, and to collect data and analytics for analysis and action. So digging into this idea of experiment design, what we want to do for designing a good experiment is to have that success or failure criteria defined right away up front. What will it take for us to keep a feature, perhaps 50% adoption of this new feature? And if it doesn't meet that metric, then it's okay to kill that feature, like Billy talked about. We don't want these things hanging around if nobody's using it. It's going to bloat the code base. It's going to be more burden for your support team, for your developers as they add new features and functionality. The design team's going to have to work around it all the time. So it's definitely okay to kill a feature. Or if you are passionate about wanting to try something else, design a new experiment with that same feature. After that, we get into this concept of a limited release. And this is to an intentionally scoped group of users. But, you know, how do we deploy this limited release? You know, is it some other set of servers? Is it a subdomain? Is it, you know, a new app where perhaps if you're thinking, hey, we want to really take some of our core product and re-envision how it might work more effectively and work better. We don't know if we can do it inside of the context of our current app. Maybe that would be a good reason to have a totally separate code base and separate offering, but that's not really what we're talking about here. What we're talking about today is being able to build new features and test things in the context of your existing production code. But how might you do that if you're going to have some new stuff and some old stuff, and who sees what and how do they see it and when do they see it? Well, it's this technique called feature flags. It's got a couple different names, but we'll roll with feature flags here today. And this allows some users to see new and different features while most of the users see the existing features and functionality. So perhaps you'd have like an admin panel. You could go in and turn on this data visualization that Ryan talked about, and only certain users in that limited subset would be able to see this data visualization. Perhaps the old ones still only see, you know, the CSV style table-based report or something like that. Now, there could be some scenarios where dynamically modifying this code at runtime and showing this versus that isn't super desirable, but I think those are pretty few and far between. Even Tesla, right, is testing their full self-driving beta through limited releases over the air to vehicles at customers' homes. So it's likely that your product can support feature flags just fine. Now, after we have the feature out there to a subset of our users, we need to make sure that we understand these experiment results. And to do that, we have to look at the data and the analytics to determine that success or failure. There's a ton of different apps that you can use to help, you know, aggregate these things, look at them in charts, see who's falling off when, go back and do some funnel analysis. So that we won't prescribe a certain subset of tools here today, but one that we really like even allows for some really lightweight recording almost of user interactions throughout your product to see the users fail or to see an error come up. And we can use these tools to our advantage to really help understand who we might want to get in that customer interview with, or if perhaps we try to get an interview with someone and they're just unavailable, or we're having a hard time scheduling those interviews. Some of these tools can help really watch the journey, at least from a action-based perspective. Maybe we won't get that feeling-based and hey, why did you stop using this? But if they hit an error, well, we can see that sometimes and fix it before they even reach out to us. So really great to have data analytics and some tooling in place to help support that. So if we're having success with this feature and our data and our analytics tell us, then it's time to scale up. Otherwise, again, we can kill that feature. We don't want it around bloating the code base. All right, so let's check in on our metric here. It looks like we had 2 things we were experimenting with in this particular round. One of them failed, one of them succeeded. So it's time to kill the one that failed and scale up on the one that worked well. So to do that, we need to move into this full feature build. And here, this is where we're going to be adding the missing pieces of functionality based on actual user feedback from our pilot customers. At this point, we could run another inside loop after this and design a new experiment. But if we're confident that with a tweak or 2 to the existing feature that we piloted, we're going to be in a good spot, then we can move on to the release and promotion. This isn't anything magic. It's really what it sounds like. We want to get our feature out to more users and get the word out. So things like marketing, social media, ads, promotions, etc. Get that word out, get it out to the folks, and get some more data at scale. That way we can support it, because when you're taking a look at supporting things at scale, some customers are going to struggle with the new features. It's just inherent in software. Not everybody understands or aligns with the exact UI or UX that you're building. So you're going to want to have things like really good release notes, guides, FAQs, and training videos to help those folks be self-serve as they're working on exploring those new features and functionality. But you also really want to be able to be there in those first 60 days to ensure that the customers are happy. Because what worked with that 2 or even 10% of your user base might actually have some issues at scale. And if there are technical issues, the great news is that because we have feature flags in place, we already have the infrastructure to be able to support a gradual rollout of this new feature. One company that does this really well is Notion, and I've have access to some of their Slack channels where they say, hey, this new feature is out today. It's out to 20% of the users. You should be getting it soon if you haven't already. And sometimes it takes 2 days before I'll see that feature show up in the platform. So because we have those feature flags and we have a good way to segment who can see what feature now versus later, we can use that to our advantage to make sure that we can support this new feature at scale. And also, aside from a dedicated customer support team, actually fielding calls and responding to emails and things, there's other tools that can really help with in-product support. So things like chat or FAQs, things that can really be more automated, but also then help the user feel like they're engaged, because there's escalation paths for those where you actually can talk to a specific customer support person. Now, for all of this to be possible, we really need to have some technical foundations for continuous delivery. And this could be a talk in and of itself. Perhaps we'll dig deeper into each one of these things in a future live stream. But today we'll just cover the highlights here of needing to have version control, which again, GitHub is one example of a hosted version control platform. So within that, you're going to want a really great branching strategy so that you can have features and functionality that your dev team is working on that can get folded back into staging and production branches and things like that. Again, can get kind of complex here to do this all really well, but at that lowest level of feature change, we want atomic or small commits, things that are really grouped together around a single feature. And the pull request and review cycle for your team needs to be agreed upon and followed so that everybody's getting good feedback. We can make sure that there's automated things that help determine whether or not we're having any security vulnerabilities or other issues. There's things called linters that can help make sure your code is all structured the same way across different developers. So that version control piece is super important. Once we get to deployment, we want that to be automated. We don't want to have people running commands on servers. So automated or continuous integration and continuous deployment, CI/CD is another way that you can think about that. And for that to work well, we want ephemeral environments, and that is environments that can be stood up and torn down really easily. They don't last for very long. They're not a set of servers in a rack somewhere that you own in your data center. I mean, that can be one possible path to success, but the majority of platforms these days are leveraging something like AWS and environments that can just spin up, spin down. And then you also want to have zero downtime when you're doing those deployments. So with our build pipeline, we need some automated test suites. That's going to be things that make sure there's regression tests, things that don't have any issues when you're pushing your code out. If a build fails because a test failed, then you're not going to push out a bug to a customer. And you want fast feedback in that build pipeline too. So that if there is an issue, you can get it reported up to whoever needs to fix it and take care of that. And then have repeatable process in this build pipeline. So again, more about that automation. In production, then, we already talked about feature flags, so you can segment a portion of new features and functionality to a certain percentage of your users. And then in order to determine whether or not things are going well or you're having issues, you have to monitor, alert, and analyze all of the data around those features and functionality. And another important automatic thing that we can leverage for a lot of platforms as a service is auto-scaling infrastructure. So things like AWS have auto scaling. Heroku is a platform as a service built on top of AWS. There's lots of examples of ways to release code into production and allow for the number of requests and users on your system to be able to automatically scale that infrastructure up and down. So a lot of teams only do one of these 4 loops well. They only do that full scale delivery. So that's build a feature, release it, and try and get it to scale. But with a solid foundation for continuous delivery, that's really what makes in-product experimentation possible. That's what we're trying to help uncover here today. So to check in back with our metric, let's see, we've shipped the feature. Let's take a look on how it's impacting everything. All right, remember we started here with the 20%. We want to try and increase it to 80. And sure enough, we actually have the data and metrics now to prove that our pilot had some impact. We scaled it up and our customers are seeing some success. A lot more customers are getting past that initial point, moving them further into the journey where we can find new areas for improvement and those can be identified. All right, I'll pass it back to Andrew now to summarize some of the concepts here.
Yeah, thanks, John. So as we talked about here, there are a lot of moving parts and they all need to talk really well to each other, right? And I think like the reason for creating this model is because you might be doing these things as teams in isolation, but you're not sharing those learnings or sharing that journey across people, right? And that context matters, like what you do matters. And so even if you're doing this asynchronously, there's still things that are gonna continue to drop. So as we look at just kind of an overview of the model to kind of step back, John, if you go to the next one here, as we're thinking about these 4 loops, is first one is, to recap, explore. So getting at customer data and feedback, like qualitative and quantitative metrics to say like, hey, where are we? What would a bump in this metric actually do for our company? Go talk to people, go do those interviews and make sure that we're getting that face time. To understand like why someone failed or what, all the reasons we just talked about, like giving us data and information is going to let us know like what the right next step is. And in my career, and I'm sure, many people watching this too, it's so much easier to just say like the customer asked for this, let's go, right? And that's where you get like the 5 whys and you get all these things of like, you just take them at their word and you ultimately go design and develop something and do that full release, as John mentioned, and then no one uses it, right? And like nobody has fun doing that. Designers don't have fun doing that. Developers who do that have no fun doing that. Product people are throwing their hands up saying we should have talked to people, right? And like we just skip these things for whatever reason, but we know that if we co-create with people, it's just going to be that much better. But identify those opportunities and go to the next one here. We prototype, go through the next loop. So those ideas we came up with, actually get them, more than just throwing spaghetti at a wall. We're looping through this with customers, and there's a chance where we get through one loop of this and we didn't hit it, right? We didn't come up with any solutions that we thought would move the needle based on what customers said or what they did and with the prototype. So we come back through it, right? And that's why they're loops, is because we could stay in a loop for more than one cycle, right? But when it's ready to then ultimately go to the product and go to pilot, we have much more information. We're able to design out the right experiment with the right, user types that we're going to test. We do the limited release. And we're able to actually measure, and at the beginning, we talked about like, how do we create systems to experiment both in simulation? That would be prototypes. That would be interviews, right? We're simulating an environment. We're talking them through a narrative or a story, or, hey, the last time you experienced this, like, would this be helpful? We're trying to simulate what they would actually do in reality. And up until the pilot, it doesn't become real, right? So even what we learned in the prototype isn't going to be 100%, but it's going to give us a better idea and also make our teams much more aligned with our customers to then say, pilot, all right, we're seeing the results that we need in reality with a small subset of users. And there could be, a couple gates of this. And I know on the podcast, we've had other folks from growth who go through a few of these pilot loops where they expand a pilot, and they go through 30, 60, 90 days of pilots with expansion and then go to this full release, right? So these are loops that your teams can stay in and really guide, and ultimately it becomes, time to scale it up. And these full releases, that's where most companies release everything to the public. As John mentioned, if you're GitHub, you're testing with your own team. If you're Figma, you're testing with your own team because you are that, and, likely have other folks that are joining with you. But if we boil it down, like, this entire thing is to align your teams around customers and actually having an impact, because there's so many ideas that can come from anywhere. There's so many initiatives that could pop out of thin air. How do we align around where we are and what bump the business needs to continue making progress and be successful? So really excited to chat through this, excited for any questions that folks may have. I have a few teed up just for our discussion here. So the first question I had kind of for us to chat through is, if everyone knows we should be co-creating with customers and interviewing and talking with them, like, why doesn't everyone do it?
I can give it a shot. In looking at startups, you think about a lot of different things. Even though we know this is valuable, a lot of teams don't actually do this. This is one of the reasons we created this model, is because we see a lot of teams actually not operating in this way. And so we want to actually be talking about it more. One of the things to think about is your team structure, and think about like a ratio of how many engineers do you have to how many product people you have. There's a ratio there. Product to engineering ratio is what I'm calling it. And think about why if you have to keep 8 engineers, rocking and delivering and shipping features and shipping product, then it's gonna be really hard to get ahead of them. Right, so it's hard to buy time to get out and buy discovery time if you're getting pulled into delivery a lot. So think of like an engineering to product ratio, if you will. I think another reason is, people do discovery, but kind of like we talked about, is they'll do it in a project-based format, right? Oh yeah, we 6 months ago, 12 months ago. Sometimes with enterprise clients, it's like 2 years ago there was this research done, and we're still talking about it. And that was valuable then, but it's not valuable going forward. And so we're talking about not just discovery, but continuous discovery, right? And working these things together. And what often happens is, from those discovery projects, they come out these nice personas, and aren't they so neat, right? We have these pretty pictures that act as like these static abstractions or proxies for our customers. And it can't substitute real people. And, I often think that, sales-led companies, if you're sales-led, they tend to be, we're talking to customers all the time, right? And, well, it's very different conversation having a salesperson try to persuade. The persuasive conversation is a very different kind of conversation that you're going to have when you're actually trying to learn and discover and figure out what's actually wrong. Those are two different types of conversations. So your sales team is not a substitute for discovery. Anything else? Any other thoughts, gentlemen?
Yeah, I guess my question in response to that is like, so say people are talking to customers, like, but the decision, do you feel like sometimes like they don't make the right decisions after they talk to them, or they don't know how to do analysis? Do you ever see like, are there any thoughts around that? Like, hey, we're talking to customers, but we don't know what to do with it. Like the responses are, right, like, oh yeah, I would buy that, or yeah, that sounds great, or I would love this, or whatever. Like, do you ever feel like sometimes the conversations having customers are the wrong ones? So when the product strategist or a designer, whoever is having those intentional conversations, do you feel like they're having the wrong ones still? It's not giving them the information they need, like the real the real nitty gritty stuff versus like higher, like, do you feel like that's an issue too ever, or is it just that people just aren't doing it right at all?
Yeah, I mean, my take on that, Jacob, would be I would much rather have you talk incorrectly to a customer every week
Mm-hmm.
and get better at it and come in with new questions, because your questions are going to change every week, right? But like, it's more often the case that it just doesn't become priority.
Mm.
And it's like real easily we could come up with a discussion guide to get you the right answers, but it also depends on context. Like the questions you're going to ask, like you're saying, do people want this, like commitment type question, like a desirability type question, is a different conversation than like a usability test, or like, do they know how to use it? Do they understand it? Do they perception test? Are we setting expectations right? There's all these different kinds of things, which I just think just takes, it's kind of like batting practice. Like, if you get up and only swing the bat once, you're not going to be very good. But if you're swinging and have a conversation with customers every week, you're going to get better and work that muscle. So I think it's more solving for, I think it's less probably about how do we ask the right questions. I think that is important, but it's more, how do we have this? I think the first thing is the bottleneck is usually, how do we have space to actually do the discovery and get and get the insights?
Yeah, I think another thing that happens is sometimes people don't want to hear what the customers have to say, right? Whether that's an entrepreneur who's been working on an idea for 3 or 4 years and it's their baby, they really want to see it to market. It's like, hey, just build it. If you build it, they will come. I know it. I can totally feel it. That same thing can happen in corporate innovation, where perhaps somebody's boss says that there's this feature that they really need to have out, and maybe it's that person's boss's boss who said we got to get this feature, and who knows where it originated from. But regardless of what a customer says, it's like, well, nobody ever got fired for hiring IBM to build, this thing. Well, my boss's bosses said we need this feature, so I could talk to the users maybe, and I'll get some feedback. But at the end of the day, that's just checking this box, and I really need to go build what they said I need to build anyway. Or the sunk cost fallacy, right? You're too far along in the build. You didn't talk to customers early enough, so you just have to finish it this way, and maybe you can teach them to like it or something. So I think it's really being aligned with, either yourself and being true to yourself and realistic with your vision for your product if you're that solopreneur, or making sure that there's alignment within the company or the corporate structure for customer-led, product, and also being able to have that space to have new insights shift the way that your roadmap is going to come to fruition.
Yeah, I think, if you go back in our series and some of the stuff I touched on in the beginning is, if your teams aren't truly empowered and they can't make the decision, like, you can't get here, right? If you don't empower your team and it's all top down, like, you're never going to get to the point where you're allowing your team to have that level of conversation with your customers. And even back to what Ryan said, like, involving sales in some of these teams is really critical. Like, if you were to think about an established product and you're trying to do some sort of innovation, you're trying to think of product 2, there'd be some level of collaboration between sales and your product team to put fake doors in the app. Or, if you're doing product-led growth, like, create landing pages inside of your, login experience to book new calls and to do new things. You'd be co-collaborating versus just sales out trying to sell new customers. Right? You'd be trying to figure out, hey, what are the opportunities with existing customers? So there can be, it's not easy, right? Like, I saw a quote on it. I'm trying to remember it specifically, but it's like, this is inconvenient, right? Like, if you think about designers wanting to design, everyone want to do their job that they're in, like,
absolutely,
it adds a level of variability that you just don't know what's going to come, and it can be dynamic. So it's never more important to align on, like, the principles of what you care about and have those guide what you do as you do discovery than, certainty. Like, some teams just want to, I think about corporate teams and some other folks that I know that are working on some of these more feature teams where you're doing what's on the backlog. You're grabbing the ticket. There's no discovery, right? They're very disconnected. The strategy and the execution is disconnected, and it could be disconnected by 2 months, by 6 months, by years even. And you just kind of say, well, this is what they identified then. But we all know that the bar for digital continues to raise every day. Every time a new product's lifted, everyone's perception of what's possible, everyone's perception of experience changes. And like, we need to realize that the insights we had 2 years ago aren't good for today. Like, we can't bank on it.
I was going to jump in and say, like, Jacob kind of mentioned it, and you did too, Andrew, is like the uncertainty of it. I think a lot of product teams have a hard time, especially when it's like, these are our timelines, these are our deadlines, we got to hit these things. It's like, you might discover something and it's going to completely change your worldview, and now to get everything realigned around that, I think that's why a lot of folks tend not to dive into this. And then on the question front too, and like following into the things that we've observed, sometimes people don't go deep enough. They don't press in hard enough on things that they've observed or things that they got. They'll get like a surface level answer and they're like, yep, let's move on. And because we got this timeline we got to meet, we got to hit this deadline. And I think that's a big risk that teams run.
Or that confirmation bias, right? Where they'll interview 3 or 4 people, 3 of the 4 said the answers that they wanted to hear, and oh, well, let's just move on.
Yeah. So one question I think that's relevant to folks watching is, say, product manager, designer, developer, someone's currently on a feature team. How can they start to influence their team and their leadership to change the approach, right? To go from this feature team to a more empowered team, to someone that, that you're able to go actually get the answers versus assume that you have them. What's the first step?
Yeah, I mean, my take on that is that, just riffing on what you guys have talked about, this is hard. And, I think there's pressure on everyone right now, especially with the economic environment we're in. Get to profitability, get, faster growth at lower burn, all those things, the board down, CEOs under pressure. And when people are under pressure too, they'll lean into their natural, style, which is go do this, or this worked for me before, right? Is an early stage founder, knew the market really well. Founder was in this like really close iteration cycle with customers. And as the company grows, the founder becomes more and more, removed. There's a lot more customers, different customer segments, just the dynamics change quite a bit. So if you're in that environment where, hey, I want to work this way, but like, we're not working this way, what can I do? I would start asking yourself, like, what's something small you can do to start to work differently? I would think about starting small and not trying to like, reorg or get a whole team split up necessarily all by yourself. If you can, that's great. Sometimes there's pilot teams that can go work this way on a new project. But I would start to think about, hey, how can you identify what assumptions is the company making right now? What assumptions are we making right now with the solutions we're building, with the roadmap that's coming up? And how could you test some of that? Maybe it's a couple customer interviews and you can invalidate some of these things that you think are risky. Maybe it's doing a couple in-product experiments to test before we build the whole thing. Let's just build the front door of it. Will people even like head down this route, right? What are some small things you can do to influence and bring some data back? Because I think if you can bring some insights and data back to leadership, that'll buy you a ton of credibility. It'll also provide value and save the company from doing something that might be the wrong thing. I think it's also like part of our model here. The key thing is to think about, based on the solutions, our roadmap, whatever we're going to go build, we're expecting to have this kind of impact. And so I would actually start to measure, hey, what impact do we think is going to actually happen? What are the metrics that matter? And actually start to visualize the opportunity tree. You kind of saw some of that. Hey, we're building these solutions. What are we trying to achieve with it? And start to frame some strategic kind of thought. And that'll help you build trust internally. I think that's something you can do is start small. The second thing is probably to share up these kinds of learnings. You could take this recording, share it with your leadership. Teresa Torres' stuff, Discovery, continuous delivery, Marty Kagan, like a lot of this stuff with empowered teams. It does come back to leadership, and it's a really hard thing as a leader to actually like surrender control. We all want to think that it's a prediction, right? The roadmap is just a prediction. The prediction is if we build it, it will have this impact. And then can you think about what assumptions are we making in that prediction? And can you help leadership identify some of that stuff early and build trust and share up some content?
Yeah, I think one way to help bolster that, Ryan, is to have that solid technical foundation that we talked about, so that you actually have the right data and you have the right, tracking happening within the app, and not tracking in a creepy way, but just, how the users are responding to the features that you have. Are people utilizing the majority of your feature set, or is it really only 30%? If you're trying to advocate for a new path or a new aspect of a feature in your product, and you're passionate about it, and even if you talk to a few customers and they said it's a great idea, if you don't have a way to measure whether or not it's actually working with the majority of customers with whom you aren't speaking, it's going to sort of feel like a passion project when you go to lead up and try and talk about, hey, this thing I think sounds great, I love it, and my family loves it, a couple customers I've talked to love it, and they're like, well, does it bear out in the data? And in order to have that data and those metrics, being able to add those features and those pieces of functionality that give you that data and those analytics is pretty critical.
Yeah, and if another way to do it is to actually look. We're talking about moving forward, like what does your roadmap look like? Assumption testing, interviews about what's coming. John's talking about this capability, this underlying capability to move fast and iterate quicker with your product. Another way to do it is to look backwards and take a look at your analytics and say, hey, what are the last features we built over the last 6 to 12 months, and how many of them actually how many of them actually get used? Right, a lot of features in products actually don't get used at all. If you can actually bring some of the historical guesses we've had, 40% of the features we built last year, nobody uses. How do we know they're going to use this next thing? Maybe that buys you some space to go do some discovery. So those are just some thoughts, Andrew.
I'm thinking of, as we talk about that, I'm actually thinking of, before Headway, working at a network operations company, ISP, and just thinking through like, what we were trying to do to move towards this. And that was like, hey, how, instead of changing the whole tide and making decisions for how the team worked, how could we identify like a design sprint that would put data at the core with some assumptions at the core, and just share like how far off were we in just 1 week, right? And that's something that your product and design team could do when you're doing discovery, is like figure out what's a small experiment or something that's, that you could run alongside what you're doing day to day, and try to carve out a win or carve out some new insights that, hey, we didn't know this a week ago. Because of us talking to our customers, like we now have this insight or this insight, and try to like implement, to your point, Ryan, like starting small, like, is there a 1 week design sprint or 2 weeks or something that we could run to build some evidence and say like, hey, it'd be great to do more of this, because I think it would help us get back on the right track. So we have a few more questions, but I don't think we have enough time today to dive into those. We're at 11:56. So I guess, if you have questions, let us know. I'll hand it back to you, Jacob. But really enjoyed talking about this. I think there's just so much value in empowering your team and aligning on metrics. And I think, I don't know, go watch our series if you're interested in more about how we propped this up and how we got here. But this is really kind of the last step in empowering your team to make a bigger impact for your startup, make more profit, do less, I guess, spin your wheels less, burn less, when it comes to roadmap, and actually build things that matter.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, everyone, thanks Billy, Ryan, John, and Andrew for just sharing all your knowledge and experiences today. It's just always good to candidly talk about this stuff and not just be. I know we have this whole series, and even our recordings of the series are pretty candid too at times. So so again, a reminder, you can see the link here, but also a link in the comments of the chat or the description is a link to that as well. So be sure to check it out. You can get access to all the videos. There's some precursor content, talking about segmentation and things like that before you kind of get into this part of the process. So lots of great stuff there. So I recommend checking it out. Each video is between 8 and I think 12 or 14 minutes. So they're really digestible. You can watch one day at a time or share certain ones with your team that are, more relatable to them. So it's just really great. And again, yeah, I highly recommend sharing this video series with your team or this recording with your team if you're watching this here on YouTube or LinkedIn Live. It's just a really fast way to get everyone up to speed on the mindset around this. So, but yeah, thanks again for everyone for tuning in. We'll have the recording of this up on YouTube next week. I'll edit out any awkward moments that we may have had to make it a little bit cleaner. But that's the goal, is to get content to you that's easier to watch. So, and we're looking forward to diving into some of these specific parts of these loops in the future with some future content and other things related to continuous discovery and continuous delivery, and overall making a bigger impact on the growth of your product and your business. So, thanks again, everybody. Last thank you. Everyone have a great day and take care.